Hi. So today we're going to talk about the carbon cycle, okay? The carbon cycle is really important with regards to climate change and global warming. So we have to figure out how carbon is stored in the lithosphere, hydrosphere, atmosphere, and biosphere, and how carbon goes from each of those spheres to a different one. Okay, so let's take a look, okay, at the different spheres first. Okay, so I'm going to look at the lithosphere first, okay, so I did this in black. We have the lithosphere, and that is belonging to the Earth, rocks and such. Where is carbon stored? Well, it can be stored as carbonate rocks, okay, so things like chalk. The chalk that you're used to, that's a carbonate. That's carbon. Also, as fossil fuels, we can have coal, which is a solid, and we can have oil and natural gas stored in the earth. That's from fossils from a long time ago. We can have it stored as skeletons of animals. Now, that's not probably a humongous percentage of the stored carbon in the earth, but there it is, okay? That's in the lithosphere. Let's look at the hydrosphere. Where is it stored in the hydrosphere? In the hydrosphere, carbon dioxide gas is dissolved. Now, the oceans are so big that it actually the oceans have a humongous amount of carbon dioxide dissolved. You probably know that there's oxygen dissolved because fish need oxygen and they breathe through their gills. They kind of exhale carbon dioxide. And if we look at the biosphere, okay, in the biosphere we have animals, biology, right? Biosphere. Okay, we have animals, we have plants, and we have animals. Forests store a humongous amount of carbon. And lastly, in the atmosphere, we have two very important greenhouse gases. And this is in the atmosphere. Okay, carbon dioxide and methane. So that's how you can find carbon in those four spheres. In the lithosphere, you have fossil fuels, skeletons, and rocks. In the biosphere, you have trees, plants, animals. Yeah, I know my drawing is not the greatest, but in the hydrosphere, you have dissolved carbon dioxide. Okay, and in the atmosphere, you have carbon dioxide and methane. How do these different forms of carbon go from one to the other? Okay, basically, let's look at them one at a time. I'm going to do this in purple just to see. Well, from the atmosphere to the hydrosphere, carbon dioxide literally dissolves whenever there's splashing and such. You know from fish tanks need bubblers to get oxygen into the water so that the fish can breathe. Well, likewise, if there's splashing, waves and such, carbon dioxide just through the interface dissolves in water. Likewise, it is possible for carbon dioxide to go to the atmosphere, although the trend right now obviously is going from there to there. How does carbon go from here into rocks? Well, carbon can form mineral rocks and settle to the bottom of the ocean, and we'll end up with carbonate rocks along the bottom. Okay, so we have from the hydrosphere, we can have carbonate rocks. We also have to the biosphere, a lot of fish and crabs and mollusks and stuff have shells. Those shells are made with calcium and carbon. And so we can say to the to the biosphere, we have animals store some of this carbon dioxide. Plants and animal life store it. Okay, so biosphere, right? How does carbon dioxide transition from the atmosphere to the biosphere? Well, we have plants take in CO2, right, through photosynthesis. And they use this CO2 to build their mass, and so all that CO2 that a growing tree takes in, a lot of it becomes part of its actual structure, and it's stored there. It's not contributing to global warming in the atmosphere. How does CO2 go from the biosphere to the lithosphere? Well, when plants and animals die, they become skeletons, and over millions of years, they become fossil fuels. Okay, so form fossil fuels. Form fossil fuels. Okay. You basically, how does carbon go from fossil fuels to the atmosphere? Well, that unfortunately is mostly us, humans. And combustion, when we burn those fossil fuels, it releases the carbon that was stored as fossil fuels, gets released into the atmosphere. There's a lot going on here. I'm probably missing something, but I think you get the idea that you have carbon in those four spheres. They are stored in those four spheres, in the biosphere, in the lithosphere, in the hydrosphere, and the atmosphere. The atmosphere is the worst of those because it's contributing to our current problem of global warming. But carbon can transfer from one sphere to another through a variety of methods. So from the atmosphere, through photosynthesis, it becomes part of the plants, the biosphere. Likewise, when we burn those plants, that carbon gets released as CO2 with combustion. Likewise, CO2 gets dissolved in the oceans. The oceans are they store the CO2 that was in the atmosphere. When we talk about something that provides carbon to the atmosphere, we say it is a source. So the burning of fossil fuels is a source of carbon dioxide to the air, to the atmosphere. The combustion of plant life is a source of carbon dioxide. However, when something absorbs or stores carbon dioxide, we call it a sink. Okay? So this is a CO2 sink. It captures carbon dioxide. However, where combustion is a source of CO2. You should know those two terms, a sink and a source. Forest fires are a source of CO2. So I hope that helps a little bit. I'll see you next time.